When I was younger, I used to say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I was probably accelerating my death in multiple ways. It's truly astounding how much we've learned about sleep in the last couple decades. We truly used to have no idea why sleep was even a human need. But now we're beginning to see, as one of the premier sleep researchers, Matthew Walker, says, sleep is nature's best guess at the elixir of immortality. In this video, I'd like to give you a host of reasons why you should take sleep seriously and what you have to gain if you do, and what you have to lose if you don't. The benefits of sleep are many, and they apply not only to the length of our lives, but also to the quality of our health over the course of our lives. Let's start with talking about the former. Well, modern medicine has gotten incredibly good at stopping quick death, which is to say, if you get hit by a car or shot, and you get to the hospital fast enough, you'll probably survive. But the position that puts us in is now many people are living long enough to die of one of 4 common conditions. This is especially true in the West. If we live long enough, our chances of dying of either cardiac disease, cancer, metabolic diseases like diabetes, or neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's rise year after year until one of them gets us. And here's the key. One of the best actions we can take to delay all 4 of those into the future is a quality 8 hours of sleep every single night. If all of this is interesting and you'd like to hear the rest, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like and subscribe. It'll just help me get this out to more people. Basically what I'm saying is every single night that you don't sleep a quality 8 hours, you're gaining more heart disease points, more cancer points, more metabolic disease points, and more neurodegenerative disease points. Personally, I want as few of those points as possible so that hopefully I live a long, long time, I'm healthy over my lifetime, and it would be really nice if I just pass away in my sleep of old age. But even if I'm just delaying those things so that I get cardiac disease 10 years later than I would have, and I have 10 years better heart health than I would have over that course of time, I'll take it. Well, this is a great time for us to talk about sleep architecture, which is to say, your sleep at different periods of the night looks very different than the other periods of the night. And those different periods bring different benefits to us. Now, all of this is to say, going to bed late and then sleeping 8 hours has a cost. And so does waking up early and sleeping less than 8 hours. But the costs of those two things are very different. So when we talk about the different phases of sleep, typically it's broken up into 4 different kind of depths of sleep stages. So the different phases of sleep we can be in are 1, awake. The next closest one is REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. The next down is NREM sleep, or non-rapid eye movement sleep. And the deepest is called deep NREM sleep, the deep non-rapid eye movement sleep. And a typical night for a human, it consists of 5 cycles of where we go from wakefulness to REM to NREM to deep NREM, and then back to NREM, back to REM, and then into wakefulness. And that would be 1 cycle. And a typical human will have 5 cycles like that throughout the night. Well, there are at least 4 important things that we need to know about the difference in these cycles and the benefits that they give us. The first of those 4 things is fascinating to me. When you look at the graphs that are produced of people's sleep throughout the night going through these different phases, each sleep cycle happens to be almost exactly 90 minutes. And the first thing that's super interesting to me is actually if we're sleeping 5 cycles of 90 minutes each, well, that adds up to 7.5 hours. So in theory, if you were completely asleep and sleeping well, you could get a quality night's sleep in 7.5 hours. And this is super important because it sets the absolute baseline goal. In fact, if you're sleeping less than 7.5 hours, my recommendation would be just cut whatever your morning routine is and try to get as close as you can to that 7.5 hours every single time. One of my favorite people to follow, Ben Bergeron, is a high-level CrossFit coach, and he actually tells people, if you're sleeping 7 hours a night, maybe skip your morning workout and try to get up to 8 hours. Well, the second thing for us to understand about these different sleep cycles throughout the night is that the first 3 sleep cycles look almost identical. Most humans spend large amounts of time at that deep NREM sleep level. So they would go quickly from wakefulness to REM to NREM into deep NREM, spend a large amount of time in deep NREM, and then come back out in the 90-minute cycle. And there are specific benefits to this extended time to deep NREM in those first 3 cycles of the night. The most important brain benefit is that the mind actually spends time in these long extended deep NREM periods where it's clearing out neural connections that you no longer need. need. It's super important because in first grade, I needed to know some really important things. But come 12th grade, I didn't really need to remember playground things. And now I don't really need to remember the social structures of high schoolers. Well, I actually work in a high school, so I kind of do, but not in the same way that I did when I was in high school. The schema of knowledge we need changes over the course of our lives. And if our brain didn't spend time at night clearing out those extra connections, we would remember all of the things that we had ever needed, and our brain would just be crowded full of stuff. The brain actually, in another phase that I'll talk about, looks for associations that we don't see between things, and it reinforces the things we do need to know. So those long periods of NREM sleep are literally calling only the things we don't need to know. The third thing that we should know about sleep architecture is that the first sleep cycle we go through has one very special benefit. If you have a constant bedtime and you go to bed at the exact same time every night, then that first sleep cycle is the only time in your adult life that you actually produce human growth hormone, allowing your body to rest and repair and recover in special ways. Now, babies spend insane amounts of time asleep every day, and one of the reasons they do is they're producing insane amounts of human growth hormone, which makes sense because they're humans that are growing insanely rapidly. Well, we're not growing anymore as adults, so we don't produce human growth hormone the same way that babies do, but we still need some to repair our bodies, and the only time you ever get it is the first sleep cycle of the night. And you only get it if you have a constant bedtime. Now, the later sleep cycles of the night, and I mean sleep cycles 4 and 5, look slightly different than the other sleep cycles in very interesting ways. One thing I could mention now is that these different phases of sleep that we go through are defined by shifts in our brain waves. So you might know that when we're awake, our brain is actually activating in what we call beta waves. And it's just like a form and function of the way that your brain is kind of communicating with itself. But when we drop into sleep, we go into REM sleep, we move into alpha brain waves. And then as we go deeper, we go into theta and delta brain waves as well. But one of the things that's very interesting about these last two cycles of the night, cycles 4 and 5, we spend extended periods of time in REM sleep instead of that deep NREM sleep. And when we're in that REM sleep, there's this really incredible thing that happens that's called sleep spindles. So you have these brain waves that are going on, and then all of a sudden you get these little like blips of like super fast activity. And that's why they call them sleep spindles, is that's what they look like on like the graph of the wave. We get like wave and then spindle and then wave and spindle, whatever. And so there's these little spindles that happen. The magic thing about sleep spindles is they correlate extremely well to learning. Your brain is literally looking for associations between any sort of far-flung content, anything that it can connect, and it's connecting those things. And that's what your brain is doing during those last cycles of sleep. It also could have association with why we're dreaming at the same time. But the real magic here is just the fact that your brain is literally learning when you're asleep. I had a college professor that I'll never forget him saying, you know, if you're really struggling with a math problem and you just can't complete it and you're stuck and whatever, just put your notebook by your bed and go to sleep. And I was like, that makes no sense. But I tried it out and I was astounded to see sometimes I'd just be struggling with this proof and I could not complete it and I didn't see the logical connection that would get me there. And so I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up at some point in the night and scribble some stuff down. And sometimes it was just gibberish. But oftentimes I found during sleep, my brain solved the problem. It didn't require any of my activity and effort. It just was actually learning and thinking while I was asleep. Now, these sleep spindles that correlate with learning do happen in the other phases of sleep, and they do happen if you take a nap, for example, but they're at their greatest amount when we're in those last sleep cycles of the night, sleep cycles 4 and 5. And what this means is that those last sleep cycles are absolutely imperative if we want to reach our learning potential. Now, all of these things have direct implications for the way that we need to operate if we want to maximize the benefits from our sleep. The first is, of course, that we need a constant bedtime. If we don't have a constant bedtime, we're giving up on most or all of the human growth hormone that our body is producing as adults, and we're just quickening our route to degeneration and death. The second implication is that if we don't spend at least 7.5 hours at sleep at night, then we're missing out on those last two sleep cycles and the most effortless, incredible way that our body participates in our learning. The third thing is that if we have this constant bedtime and spend 7.5 hours of sleep every night, then we get this added benefit of our brain going through and culling extra information that we no longer need to remember. The fourth benefit of sleep, and this to me might be the most important one, is it is one of the best actions we could possibly take in our entire lives to make sure that we fend off heart disease, cancer, metabolic diseases, and neurodegeneration. And as a fifth kind of bonus implication, there are not a lot of studies around what we call biphasic sleep, or a nap during the day and then sleeping at night. But the studies that do exist seem to be very promising in showing that a nap during the day correlates with learning and probably does a lot to fend off these other diseases as well. Now, honestly, so far, I've really only talked about the benefits to our brain and learning and totally ignored the benefits to our body. But this video is getting a little long, so I'll save that for a future video. And when I make that video, I'll go ahead and link it here. Next week, I'm going to be making a video on the actions that we can take in order to make sure that we do sleep well every night. And when I publish that, I'll link it here as well. Truly, there is almost nothing that correlates with a long and healthy life more than quality sleep habits. Stoic Yogi, out.